So you say you have a character, but it's also somewhat based on you. But did you also, to write the story from her perspective, did you also, well, lock yourself up for 2 weeks or something like that to get in her mindset?
Something like that. I mean, I don't want to make it sound like I'm some terribly tortured artist, but yes, it was quite an intense process where I had to create this, firstly, the diary of the 13-year-old. Now, of course, for me, to write from a female perspective is already a challenge. To write from the perspective of a 13-year-old teenage girl is even more of a challenge. So I also, as well as the blog, which you've already seen, presumably, there's also, which you haven't seen yet, is this diary written by this 13-year-old girl. Now, I don't know how convincing I've managed to do it. We'll find out, I guess. But that was a stretch, you know, that was a stretch. And again, I suppose in a sense, I was going back and trying to imagine myself as a 13-year-old boy, to get as close as I could, at least, to that perspective and that character. And that was quite intense. I mean, actors talk about how they inhabit the role, and almost they take on the personality and they live like their character. I wouldn't say I went that far, but there was certainly an element of my head being full of this world and this character for the period of time that I was writing the story and the blog, yeah.
Okay. What was the starting point? Was it the story, or did you have some music and the story fitted to that?
No, the story, because I think the story is everything. Because the story is also what gives you your musical world, your musical palette. And the best way I can illustrate that is to look back at, say, my previous album. A couple of years ago I made an album called The Raven That Refused to Sing, and that album was based on the idea of a book of almost classical ghost stories, short stories, almost thinking back to, you know, like the era of Edgar Allan Poe, like late 19th century. And because of that, the music had a very, I could say, old-fashioned feeling to it, or vintage quality to it. Now, fast forward to this album, this is a story set very much in the 21st century, so straight away it's in the modern world. Secondly, it's set in the heart of the metropolis. It's a completely different, for me, straight away that suggests a completely different musical palette, a bit different musical world. So to have had the music first wouldn't have made sense. The music had to grow out of the world that was created, you know, in this story.
And what would you say through your music by retelling this story?
I don't know. I mean, the answer, I understand what you're saying. I don't know is the simple answer. I like to think that everything I do is like some kind of mirror, and as an artist or as a writer, all you can really do is hold up a mirror to your audience and say, this is the way I see the world. Do you recognize yourself in the mirror? Or do you agree with what you see? Or do you disagree with it? You know, do you understand where I'm coming from? What I don't like is to feel like I'm preaching or telling the audience, like, this is what I'm telling you the world is like, or this is how you should think, this is how you should not think, this is how you should live your life, this is not... I don't like to do that, but at the same time, of course, I do have a strong perspective on the way I like to live my life. So I feel like when I make a record like this, there are, of course, a lot of strong opinions in the record, you know, a lot of strong feelings. But I feel it's like holding up a mirror and saying, if you don't recognise yourself, fine, but this is the way I see the world. Do you recognise this world? And maybe it's just my world, I don't know. But so far I'm feeling like a lot of people do sort of see them, you know, understand where I'm coming from, and they have similar kind of sentiments. But that might just be because the kind of fans and the people that appreciate my music have that, you know, kind of similar perspective on life anyway. I'm sure there are many people that love internet and love social networking and think it's great that you can talk on Facebook all day and think it's great that you can play interactive computer games all day. I don't think that's what human beings are supposed to do, but some people probably do, you know.
And was it also like holding a mirror up for yourself in terms of looking
course.
at your personal relations?
Yeah, of course. I think every song I write is also like an exorcism, or it's like a cathartic process. In fact, one of the questions I get asked most is, why is your music so melancholic, And then they meet me and they find I'm not that person at all. And I think one of the reasons is that the music becomes almost like a vessel to pour all of my negativity into, my loneliness, my melancholia, my anger, all kind of goes into the music in a way so that I exercise that part of me. And so that is a very important constituent part of me. And in a way you cannot appreciate my personality without also experiencing the music, because it is a strong part of me. So yes, and I learn a lot about myself through what I write.
And in relation to this album?
It's very personal. I mean, as I say, I did live in the city. I do have concerns all the time about stepping outside my front door. Even this week, I'm travelling around Europe this week. I was in Paris for 2 days. 2 weeks ago, you know what happened in Paris. So, I mean, it's very easy to say, I don't want to step outside my front door anymore. I'm paranoid about what might happen. Even getting on a plane these days, or a train, or taking a bus. There's been a stabbing in Tel Aviv this morning on a bus. I lived in Tel Aviv for a few months. So all of these things kind of make you, in a sense, feel like the world simultaneously becomes smaller because people are more connected via the internet, but at the same time people retreat more and more into their own kind of internal insular world through fear, through paranoia, through confusion, and simply through the speed and the stress of life. And I'm no different to that.
And also another topic on the album is regret, and also on The Raven That Refused to Sing. Well, you said about it that ghost stories symbolize regret
and loss. Yeah, I think for me the classical ghost story are symbols really for loss and regret, and how to deal with loss and how to deal with regrets, things that were left unsaid, and all that stuff. Those are things that really run through a lot of my songs. This is no exception. Regret in this sense is regret for paths taken. And one of the things about life, in fact, one of the things that really defines us as human beings is the decisions we make in life. And every time you make a decision, you are, by definition, closing off a certain path. And it could well be that the decision you've taken was the right one, but that doesn't mean you can't still also have regrets for the other paths that you could have taken that you did not take. But you have to make decisions. Listen, I had the choice when I was leaving school to do any number of things in my life. I like to think I made the right decision by saying I'm going to be a musician, but at the same time I'm also a frustrated filmmaker, I'm a frustrated writer, but life is only so long, and everything you do is kind of measured against the ticking clock. So you have this, I think always there's this slight melancholia about the fact that you have also closed off, whether it's you made decisions about which relationship to pursue, which job, which career path to go down, who is going to be your friends, who are going to be your enemies, Those things always carry, I think, by nature, they also carry a sense of regret.
Okay. The album title is pretty cryptic, Hand.Cannot.Erase.
Just the way I like it. Yeah. I think, what is unfortunate in a way about making an album is you have to give it a title. Not unfortunate, but sometimes it's unfortunate because when you give an album a title, you're almost telling your listeners that that's what the album is about. Now, I could have called this album The Loneliness of Living in the City. Which is, of course, one of the things it's about, but it's also about all these other things. As we discussed, it's about all these other things. So in a way, it's unfortunate that you have to give an album a title. But for me, the compromise is to give it a title which actually isn't clear. It's ambiguous, has a sense of mystery about it. It's a little bit enigmatic, even with the way it's punctuated. I like that, and I don't want to tell you too much about it, except to say that the key word obviously is erase. This is a woman that chooses to erase herself, in a sense. But beyond that, I like the fact that the title is a little bit ambiguous and mysterious.
Okay. Well, in another previous interview with us, you said that the work you imagine in your mind, you can't really get it. Oh, let's see. What you imagine in your mind, you can never really create in the real world about music.
Right.
But about the last album, you said you were pretty close. And
Yes.
how is that with this album?
Bit closer still. Yeah, I think, I understand what I was saying there. I'll just expand on it slightly. I think one of the tragedies of being someone who creates is you can never really capture what you want to capture. In some senses, being an artist is always about chasing this ideal and to somehow capture and crystallize a moment or a feeling or a thought or an experience. And of course you can never really capture it, but you can try and you can get as close as you can. And I feel like I get a little bit closer every time, with varying degrees of success or failure. But that's the curse of the creator, to never quite. But in some ways that's a good thing, because that's what keeps you thinking you can do better next time. I feel like this album, well, then I always do. I always feel every album I've made is the best thing I've done. This is no exception. I feel it's the best thing I've done. But at the same time, I don't ever want to hear it again. I don't want to, because I've spent 18 months of my life writing, demoing, rehearsing, recording, mixing, editing. I don't need to hear it again. But I'm very, very proud of it. Okay.
And last question, for the rumors that Porcupine Tree would make new music in 2016, can you share something on that?
Well, I know, I did hear about these rumours, and one of the funny things about the internet, another of the funny things about the internet, is how quickly something that somebody just makes up, a lie, can become a rumour, can become a fact. It was just some guy who went on a website. I've never met him. He pretended he knew me, and he said something like, Stephen Wilson has told me that the next project is going to do a Porcupine Tree album. He just made it up. I've never met him. But that was picked up by a couple of blog sites. It became a rumour, and then before you know it, it's become a fact. And people are saying to me, oh, I hear you're doing this next. No. It's extraordinary. Listen, the thing with Porcupine Tree is that I am not ruling out going back and doing another record with Porcupine Tree one day. I suspect that if I did do it, it would be it would have to be more like a side project to what I do now, because why would I go back? Why would I want to go back to a band now? But at the same time, Porcupine Tree has a very special place in my heart and my career, and I think we do have a really distinctive sound when we work together. So I'm definitely not ruling it out, and I think probably we will make another record. Whether it'll be the last or not, I don't know. But right now, I can say I have no plans to go back to the band.
Okay, thank you very much.
My pleasure.